city filled my head. Darkness falls on the bridge, treading on concrete slabs, running fingers over cracked paint on railings that divide people within. It's a sin. Walking further down and within, tenements loom as darkness further grows in. You're never alone within these streets, cackles of girls in trackies and short skirts, blue and green, they're all the same on Saturday. It's just the way it's always been. It's not just ship of land, there's more to this river and land. She'll open her arms and welcome you'll feel. It's in your seats more than the boats that are made of steel. Ladies roll the trolleys down the road, messages for children's children, mints and tatties, but nothing left to say. It's always better the next day. And running by, scuffed like clocks, slamming pavements hard before it's too dark. It's not just ship and land, there's more to this river and land. She'll open her arms and welcome you'll feel. It's in your seats more than the boats that are made of steel. At the corner of my eye, the church lies in the night. Reflections of times of the past on gravestones, sipping on their buckfires. It's monks that make it, they'll say we're holier than you. We're saving our sinners for a rainy day. It's not just ship and land, there's more to this river and land. She'll open her arms and welcome you'll feel. And soon you'll see it's more than the boats that are made of steel. It's not just ship and land, there's more to this river and land. She'll open her arms and welcome you'll feel. And soon you'll see it's more than the boats that are made of steel.
Hello and a warm welcome to Sounds from Scotland from the American Scottish Foundation. My name is Jamie McGeechan and I'm so glad you can join us. I hope you're having a great weekend wherever you may be. On this episode of Sounds from Scotland, I'm joined by Alan Beck, Senior Vice President of the Robert Burns World Federation, as we learn all about the work of the Burns Federation, their aims, objectives, and many projects. Certainly, as a person from Ayrshire in Scotland myself, I was familiar with the Robert Burns World Federation from a young age, and they do great work encouraging people of all ages to develop their interest in Robert Burns, Scotland's national bard. We've got some great music on Sounds from Scotland on this episode, and I have a great interview with Mike McKenzie, BBC Radio Scotland's Songwriter of the Year award winner. A fantastic interview with a great talent. Before we go any further, I'd like to dedicate this episode of Sounds from Scotland to my mother, who just passed away, Rosie. She was the best Scot that I'll ever know. And now I'm joined by Alan Beck, Senior Vice President of the Robert Burns World Federation. Looking forward to our conversation, as I have been for the last few weeks. So I'm grateful to you for taking the time to speak with us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Alan Beck, Senior Vice President of the Robert Burns World Federation. How's your day going, Alan?
It's going extremely well, thanks. Even better for seeing you, Jamie.
Thank you so much. You're a gentleman, a gentleman. Where in the world are you today, please?
I am in sunny Greenock. For those who don't know, Greenock is about 20 miles sort of west of Glasgow, and it sits on the River Clyde, and I have a fantastic view of the Argyllshire Mountains. So I look right across to the West Highlands from my house.
I've not spent much time in Greenock, although my parents did meet there at a nurse training college back in the early 1980s. They've certainly told me that they loved living and studying there as they were trained to be nurses. I'm delighted that we can catch up today to talk a wee bit about the Robert Burns World Federation. It's a fantastic organisation that does so much to promote Burns all around the world, and I was hoping that we could start off with a wee bit about the history of the Burns Federation, please, Alan.
Yeah, certainly. The Federation was formed in 1885, so not yesterday. It's been going for, about 135 years or something like that, if my maths is kind of any good. It was formed by Victorian gentlemen who were very, very keen on Burns and very keen on what Burns meant to the nation of Scotland. In fact, you'll see behind me that the background, you can see two faces in the background. They're both the same person. They're both a chap called Colin Ray Brown, who was actually from Greenock. Like myself, he was a past president of Greenock Burns Club, the mother club, the world's oldest Burns club, formed in 1801. Oh. And Colin Ray Brown was quite a remarkable man, and he was responsible for a great deal of the Burns memorialisation, which went around at the time. And one of the forms of memorialisation which he was very keen on was statues, obviously, but actually he decided that it would be a really good idea to bring the various Burns clubs of the world and the Scottish societies and things together under the one umbrella. So that's exactly what happened in 1885, and they had the first meeting of the Burns Federation in Kilmarnock in Ayrshire, Burns' home county. So since 1885, it's been the umbrella organisations for Burns clubs around the world, and it disseminates information. It keeps the memory of Burns alive, and it's been doing that for, as I say, quite some time.
Absolutely. Yes, I think one of the first times that I became aware of the Robert Burns World Federation was probably through music competitions that my primary school at the time, Ayr Grammar, were involved in, and I just thought that was such a wonderful way to to bring us in to Burns basically through music, and the competitions through the schools in Scotland are such a passionate initiative, and they really do involve thousands and thousands of young people singing and performing the works of Burns, and I just thought that was wonderful, and still very much a very popular initiative today.
Absolutely, it's one of the most vital parts of what we do. The Federation over the years has been responsible for many things in memorialising Burns and keeping the flame of Robert Burns alive. But I think one of the main things that it does is to instill in children the knowledge and the love of Burns through the school's competition, exactly as you just said. So yeah, it's great to hear that there's a wee Ayrshire boy like yourself who's been kind of brought into the Burns world by the Robert Burns World Federation's competitions. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And my younger brother, he's a fiddle player. He was playing in a couple of the competitions, I think 3 years ago now, and we're just so delighted that he can take part. I was wondering if we could talk a wee bit about those projects and objectives of the Federation, of which there have been so many brilliant initiatives, not only in Scotland but around the world.
Sure. I suppose number one, the Federation is kind of there to encourage love and scholarship and performance of Burns. And of course, it does that through arranging competitions, not just for school children, but we do have older students who get involved in reciting of Burns and various different things. Like there's a Tam O'Shanter competition that goes on, and various sorts of things like that. I think also the idea is that we stimulate and we develop the study and the teaching of not just Burns actually, but also of Scottish literature in general, and Scottish music and the Scots language. We have on our committee, we have a heritage convener who is one of the directors of the Federation, and a lot of the heritage stuff is designed to help conserve buildings and places which are associated with Robert Burns and with Burns' contemporaries. But in the end, you know, one of the great things about Robert Burns, and when you think of his most famous piece, Auld Lang Syne, and you think of giving out the hand of friendship to people, we're here to strengthen the bond of fellowship amongst members of Burns clubs by encouraging them to honour his memory, by encouraging them to hold Burns suppers, by encouraging them to get involved with their their children, their young people in competitions. So the Federation is kind of it's designed to do all of these things. In the end, we are here to preserve the memory of Robert Burns, to educate ourselves about him, to conserve what we have of him, and to have a kind of fellowship amongst other Scots or other Burns admirers who maybe aren't Scots. We've certainly got enough Burns admirers who aren't Scots. I mean, there's a very flourishing club who's a member of the Federation in St. Petersburg, not in Florida, but St. Petersburg in Russia. There's Burns clubs in Hong Kong. So it's not just for Scots. As you probably know, we have several clubs in North America also, and I suppose those clubs would have been started by Scots who had emigrated, but they're not all Scots in these clubs nowadays, I can assure you of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, if I could, a wee bit, Alan, about your journey with Burns. How did you first meet Burns, as it were, please?
Oh, Jamie, how long have you got?
Okay.
So when I was growing up, it was a great tradition in those days that there was singing in the house, and there was always parties in our house or in the neighbour's house, especially at Hogmanay, at New Year's Eve. we would always have parties and people would always perform. Now, I'm not suggesting that they always performed Burns, but Burns was certainly a feature in my home. My parents introduced me to a number of Burns songs and other Scott songs. The first time I can remember actually seeing a Burns song in print was an edition called the Oxford Scottish Songbook by Cedric Thorpe Davy and George McVicar, who were two arrangers and composers. And they had taken a number of songs, Scott songs, and they had made new arrangements of them. And my friend had a copy in his house of this. And I remember looking at a song, which is not a particularly well-known Burns song, but certainly a song which I've been singing now for a number of years, called "O Lay Thy Life in Mine, Lass," which means "Put your hand in mine." And that's a song which I first actually saw in print. I think that's the first song ever I saw in print. And that's always stayed with me. I then sang that song at one of the Burns Federation schools competitions when I was about 8 or 9, something like round about that sort of age. And it's never gone away from me. So I've actually sung that song all over the world. I went, "Oh, lay thy life in mine, lass, in mine, lass, in mine, lass, and swear on thy white hand, lass, that thou wilt be mine. There's money, alas, has broke my rest, that for a blick I haloed best, but thou art queen within my breast. Forever to remain. Oh, lay thy life in mine, lass, in mine, lass, in mine, lass, and swear on thy white hand, lass, that thou wilt be my
Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Can you tell us a wee bit about the background of the song, please, Alan?
It's a typical love song of Burns. It's kind of bittersweet, and it's a simple song. Lif means hand. It's just simply, give me your hand, and I'll be yours. I'll be a slave to you, and nothing will separate us. Now, you and I might say that in 3 or 4 words, but Burns can paint an entire picture from just a couple of verses. So yeah, it's one of my favourites. I think because it's one of the very first that I ever sang. And as I say, I've been singing it for quite a few years now.
The master craftsman and masterfully done. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I went to the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama when I was 18 or 19, and I did my music degree through the college and Glasgow University. And from there, I went on to become a professional freelance singer. I was involved setting up a group called Caledon, Scotland's Three Tenors. And we had some great trips to North America after our PBS special, which was called On a Beautiful Scottish Evening. And in that, we sing a number of Burns songs. A Man's a Man for All That, My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose. etc. Auld Lang Syne, obviously. So I've been singing Burns for an awfully long time. As I said earlier, the Green Up Burns Club, the mother club, the oldest in the world, is my local club, and I joined that club quite a few years ago now, and so I've been attending Burns functions in that club for years, but actually since about the age of 10, I've been singing at Burns suppers every year, and the older I've got, the more Burns suppers I seem to do. I've been speaking at them actually for a number of years, doing the principal toast, the immortal memory, or the toast to the lassies or whatever. But I started off singing at those Burns suppers, and it is a big part of my January, February every single year. I seem to be out, most nights of the week in January and February, doing it. One of the many Burns suppers which are in my local area, but also going further afield. In fact, I've spoken at Burns suppers in Chicago, in New York, in Houston, Texas. So yeah, it's been, Burns and me have got on quite well for the past few years.
Incredible journey you have with Burns, from a right young age, being inspired by his works, and then taking that inspiration with you around the world as an artist, as a performer, from Scotland, singing the works of the Bard. Can't get better than that. I mean, I'm sure that your works with Caledon as well. I mean, what an incredible experience for people around the world to get to hear you do that.
We just seem to be everywhere. And what I was saying earlier on about Burns and Scotland, but Burns outside of Scotland, the Scots generally are incredibly popular around the world. I mean, most people like the Scots, and if you go anywhere wearing your kilt, and if you can sing a bit of a Scots song and you're wearing your kilt, people abroad probably think you're actually quite exotic. And in fact, I spent about 18 months of my life over various periods of time in Berlin, performing in cabaret with Caledon. The Germans just loved it. The interesting thing is that we were there singing Scots folk songs. Now, the Germans absolutely love folk songs. It's so much a part of their culture. But since the Second World War, they have had a reluctance to do anything which shows patriotism, because they associate patriotism with the Second World War period. So Germans are not so comfortable in singing their own folk songs, and therefore they'd love other people to sing folk songs. So we did over 200 performances, I think, probably in Berlin, just going along in our kilts and singing Scottish folk songs to the Germans. And they absolutely loved it. And one of the really nice things I think about those shows was that we took a couple of German folk songs in German, and we arranged them very nicely and sang them to the Germans, and they were incredibly touched by that, incredibly touched that here were these Scots who were coming in their national costume, and they were coming to sing the songs of Scotland, but they were happy to sing a couple of the songs of Germany, and it brought tears to the eyes on many occasions. Yeah, so having the opportunity to do that from Scots songs and especially from Burns songs has been wonderful. Everybody in the world, no matter where you go, as soon as you sing, "Should old acquaintance be forgot," everybody knows that tune. They all know what that is, and they all know that it's a song of friendship. So yeah, it's almost been a great passport.
Can you talk a wee bit about the relevance of Burns today, please, Alan?
I think Burns is probably more relevant today than he's ever been. I mean, maybe that's a bit of a cliche to say, because he was certainly relevant to Scots in the 19th century, because after his death, Burns seemed to, in some way, encapsulate what it meant, what Scottish nationality meant. I think we go through a very difficult time at the minute in Scotland because of the whole idea of independence and political independence, etc. During the 19th century, Scots didn't. There wasn't actually the desire for political independence in the 19th century. Scotland was a part of the British Empire, and the British Empire was doing very well. Thank you very much. So there wasn't really the desire for it. But what there was a desire for cultural equality between the Scots and the English. The Scots felt that they really wanted, if they were going to be part of this union, they wanted to be an equal partner in this union. And that really was instilled in the whole Burns cult. Burns came to represent, in a certain sense, the people of Scotland and their nationality. And actually, it's one of the areas that I'm quite interested in studying. In 1884, when the Federation was about to begin, just previous to that, Burns had his bust placed in Westminster Abbey in Poets' Corner by the help of the man that you see behind me, Colin Ray Brown, who I mentioned before. And in fact, Brown raised the money for that bust by a public subscription, and the public subscription was £1, which, don't ask me what that is in American money just now, but it won't be an awful lot. It'll be a couple of cents. So he raised the money to put a bust of someone who wrote in Scots next to the most famous writer in the English language, William Shakespeare. And that was all to do with cultural equality between Scotland and England. So your question about how relevant is it today? Well, I think Burns has actually been hugely responsible for shaping how people feel about their Scottishness. And Burns himself wouldn't know anything about that because it didn't really happen until after his death. But it was how Victorian Scots in the 19th century viewed him and how they put him on a pedestal and in a sense invented the Burns cult. That has shaped how we see ourselves as Scots, and it's gone right up to the present day. During the independence referendum, there was a huge argument about, would Burns have voted unionist? Would he have voted nationalist? Would he have voted to stay? Would he have voted to leave the union, etc.? And you got politicians on both sides giving all sorts of points of view about that. And of course, how on earth they think they would know how Robert Burns would have voted? He didn't have the vote anyway for a start because he wasn't a big landowner. But he is incredibly important to Scots today in how they see Scotland and their Scottishness. But you know, when you look at his message, because of the type of person he was, he wrote about things that mattered to normal people. So of course he's important. Burns is probably the first environmentalist. Certainly in Scots, he's the first environmentalist, because you look at his poems and he talks about the flowers. He talks about the birds. He talks about nature because he was a man who worked on the land. So nature was incredibly important to his well-being and to his livelihood. You know, the whole kind of environmentalist issue which is going on at the minute, and in fact Glasgow's about to hold the big conference, environmentalist conference, next month. Burns was writing about saving the environment 230 years ago. As I said about a man's a man for all that and auld lang syne, Burns is incredibly relevant because being friends and getting on with our fellow man, and also in seeing that our fellow man is an equal to us no matter what he does. We are all on the level in Burns' eyes. That's something which I think is incredibly important these days because there are such divisions in society. Burns basically said it doesn't matter who you are, you know, you're a person and we're all the same. You don't have more right than me, and vice versa. So all that is incredibly important. But of course, his love poetry, that will transcend the generations. That will never die. People will always fall in love, and they will always be incredibly moved by love, and they'll always want to express it. So he's even more important, I would say.
Can you direct our listeners and viewers to the Robert Burns World Federation website, please, Alan?
Yeah, the Federation website is rbwf.org.uk. So rbwf.org.uk. And that will take you onto the website, and you'll be able to see all the work really that RBWF does.
Perfect, thank you. And there is a newsletter that people can sign up to, and they can join on social media as well.
Sure, we have a Facebook page. Again, go to Robert Burns World Federation, type that into Facebook, you'll get onto that. Facebook obviously will show you a lot of the stuff that we do also. The newsletter goes out to members. Members also get a copy of the Burns Chronicle. The Burns Chronicle is the premier journal about Robert Burns in the world. It is put together for RBWF by the Centre for Robert Burns Studies at Glasgow University. It's published by Edinburgh University Press. It goes out to all the great universities of the world, and the articles are done by some of the world's finest Burns academics. Again, that's really one of the privileges of membership, to get that. As I say, it's been going since 1892, and once again started by the gentleman you see behind me, Colin Ray Brown.
We've much to be grateful to Colin Ray Brown for.
We have indeed. This is his 200th anniversary. He was born in Greenock in 1821, and in fact, I've just finished an article for the Robert Burns Chronicle about Colin Ray Brown's bicentenary. So we're having a huge dinner for him in Greenock, which is going to be attended by the Lord Lion, the Lord Lieutenant, the Provost of Greenock. The principal speakers are Professor Jerry Carruthers, Dr. Clark McGinn. It's a big event, and it's all to do with the bicentenary of the founder of the Robert Burns World Federation, Colin Ray Brown.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to hearing much about Mr. Brown in the time to come, and he more than deserves the celebration and respect. It's been a real privilege to speak with you today. Thank you so much, Alan. It's been an absolute delight, and I'm grateful to you for your time.
Thanks for asking me, Jamie. I've been really enjoying myself chatting away to you here, as if we're in the same room, and yet we're thousands of miles apart.
From St. Louis to Greenock and back, absolutely. Hopefully we'll get the chance soon, because I would be honoured to meet you and to hear you sing in person, if I could twist your arm to do so.
Well, you know what? If we don't see each other before, we'll see each other at Tartan Day in New York.
It's going to be absolutely incredible. It really will be. It will be brilliant. It's been online for the last 2 years, and I just think this coming together, the celebration in person again, is going to be wonderful. And I know that we're all very intrigued as to your visit and your special guest. So we look forward to hearing about that again soon. Thank you so much, Alan Beck, Senior Vice President of Robert Burns World Federation. Take care, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
A fantastic interview with Alan Beck there, Senior Vice President of the Robert Burns World Federation. Thank you to Alan. Some great music now. Sophie Craig from Alloway, a great Burnsian, a fantastic talent, and I think you're going to enjoy this very much.
fairest. Fare thee well, thou best and dearest. Ride thee ilk a joy and treasure. Peace, enjoyment, love, and pleasure. A fond kiss, and then we sever. Farewell, alas, forever. Deep in heart run tears that pledge thee. Warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee.
An excellent performance and music video there from Sophie Craig from Alloway in Scotland, one of the most beautiful renditions I've ever heard. To keep up to date with the American Scottish Foundation, please visit our website at americanscottishfoundation.org. We're active across social media on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please email americanscottishfoundation@gmail.com. We're always very happy to hear from you. Hello, Mike. It's so lovely to
Hi.
see you. How are you doing today?
I'm good, yeah, good. All gravy. Had a nice morning, just kind of now hanging out in the afternoon. Sun shining in Scotland, so that's nice.
Yes, always good, always good. Whereabouts in Scotland are you? Are you in Edinburgh?
Yeah, Edinburgh, yeah. Just
Awesome.
outside. So I'm out in Blairno, so out by the Pentland Hills. So I'm sort of just outside of the city, which is perfect for me.
Gorgeous.
Um,
A really inspiring place as a
yeah.
musician.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful. I actually grew up here, and then sort of moved away for a bit, pretended to be a grown up, and then was like, "That's rubbish. I don't want to do that anymore." And ended up back here again. I guess yeah, opportunities led me back here again, which was nice because it's all familiar and comfy, and but also having stepped away for a minute at least, it's not so insular, you know.
Absolutely. It's interesting how that happens in life. Paths just lead you places, they lead you here, they lead you there, but ultimately often they lead you home. They lead you home.
Yeah, 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 totally. It's been a weird one. So my husband's actually from Connecticut, but lived in Brooklyn for like 11 years. So we did. There's again more sort of expansion, but we ended up back in this little village. Sort of folk are like, so sorry, there was like gonna live in Brooklyn and like New York, and we were like, and you've moved, you've all, you've both moved to a wee village in Edinburgh. I'm like, yep, because that's where our little hub will be, and we shall go off on our adventures from here, but always sort of return. He's an actor, so we're hoping that both of us will be floating around and traveling a lot. But we wanted to have like a little hub, you know. So yeah, so we ended up here. So it's ideal.
Lovely. That is so many people's dream that I meet over here. Like I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, have been for 2 years, and so many people that I meet here. The idea of living in Balerno or anywhere in Scotland, Edinburgh would be a dream come true for them. Especially in a kind of a smaller community where you know everybody and there's a kind of real authentic sense of community and
Yeah,
full of lovely Scots.
yeah, okay, well, exactly. Of course, not to be biased or anything, but yeah, I definitely missed that when I lived outside of the town. It was like that, you know, saying like good morning to like a person as you walk the dog in the morning isn't sort of like, do I know you? It's like, oh, morning, like just like that sort of, you know, Beauty and the Beast bell moment, you know, like saying good morning to the butcher and the baker, and yeah, I love it, love it, love the community feel of it all. But Edinburgh's a big, massive community. It's a big village anyway. They always sort of always joke about that, but it's so true. It's like everyone's only like 1 or 2 degrees separated, you know. But yeah, it's that's also great. Sort of, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where, so like, I've literally grown up in Edinburgh, so you know, whether it's walking past the castle or the Fringe, it's kind of, sadly, we, I think, take for granted the things that are on our doorstep sometimes, and then it takes, you know, someone coming from out of town to be like, come on, we'll go and do this, and suddenly you sort of see it again with fresh eyes, and it's quite a spectacular thing. The Fringe is just unbelievable experience. Like, highly recommend anybody come and do it, you know. But yeah, get somewhere to stay outside the city, because otherwise it will cost you a small fortune to live in the city centre if you want to come and visit for the Fringe. But definitely worth coming to check out. It's amazing. It's an amazing arts festival.
The American Scottish Foundation's Sounds from Scotland podcast, and you'll know better than most how Scotland and America, it can be a really good cooperation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, first hand. So that's good. But yeah, we shall high five maybe, perhaps, because we'll be heading out there for Thanksgiving in a couple of weeks as we pass, and you'll be back here for Christmas. So.
Aye, absolutely. The first time I ever heard your music, Mike, was on the very final of the inaugural BBC Radio Scotland Singer-Songwriter Award. That was the very first time, and I just remember hearing about the competition, and I just thought, I've got to check this out. And I was listening along, and I really enjoyed all the performances that I heard. But when you played, I was like, that is special. That's it. That's incredible. That is making me feel something. You know, that is making me feel something. And I was not surprised, but I was very, very chuffed. When you won, I was like, yes, that was the song. That was the song. That was September 2019, and
yeah, 2019.
it was just incredible, and I'm so glad for that competition, because you know it brought you to my attention, and undoubtedly many other people as well. I was wondering if you could talk a wee bit about the experience of the BBC Radio Scotland Singer-Songwriter Award.
It was amazing. So like, basically, at some point I saw, I think it was like Jim Gellatly or Vic. It was one of the sort of Scottish music legendy type people had posted something about it, and it was like, send a demo, and we're gonna, and it's open. The thing that drew me in was that it was open to absolutely everybody of all different ages, of all different styles of music. It was to everyone in Scotland, or that was living in Scotland as well. So it was like a real open sort of platform for people. And then I filmed myself playing a couple of songs and sent them in, and then never thought about it for, I think, 4 months. And then got a phone call from Sharon Mayer, who headed the whole thing at the BBC, and she was like, right, we loved your demo, you're in the final 10. Do you want to come and play live, and we'll put it to a public vote to get to that was the final 10. Put it to a public vote to get to the final, and then it'll be a live show at St Luke's, which is a really famous, iconic Glasgow venue. And and then it was like, okay, cool, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And then, shocker, I ended up getting through to the final. But the panel was amazing. The panel of people that was looking after it was Fran Healy from Travis. It was Horst MacDonald, who I've now become friends with Horst, which is an amazing thing. It was Jeff Ellis at DF Concerts, which is like Live Nation, which is King Tut's, which is like a huge part of the live music scene. It was Dee Ball, who was the Biffy Clyro's manager when they first started off, and Karine Polwart as well, who is a huge folk singer in Scotland as well. So it was this like iconic Scottish panel of people that were all, you know, making the decisions, but they saw something, I guess, in my songs, in my writing, and and then I guess the public did too, and it became into the final. We played that show at St Luke's, and they decided that I should be given the award. So it was amazing. It was an amazing opportunity, absolutely amazing, and the whole experience, because part of it was doing these workshops as well with like Davy Scott, who's Pearl Fishers. Again, another like iconic Scottish heritage band, you know. But like that whole experience before then, I'd basically just been playing open mics. Like it was just, like, you know, I'd not really played many shows. I think I'd played maybe 2 or 3 actual name on the list on a show, you know, like that was it. As a artist anyway, because I actually was a drummer years ago, so I did all of this for, I did all this when I was a teenager as well, but as a drummer. Yeah, so I was like, but I was behind a drum kit, behind a guitarist, behind a lead singer in a band when I was like a teenager, and but it went really well. It was amazing. It was really good. We were playing really cool shows and stuff. And then, like I said to you just before we started recording, you know, I went and pretended to be a grown up for a wee while, and then this is my coming back to music again. So
as soon as I heard your song, you know, it moved me instantly. You know, I hear an awful lot of stuff on the radio on my travels, and a lot of it doesn't really connect with me. You know, I feel like it's maybe I'm just not the audience. That's the best way to put it. But with your song, when I heard it, I just thought everyone's going to love this. This is great.
Oh, wow.
You know, this is brilliant.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could introduce your song that you performed on the night, please, Mike.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I wrote it. It was when my husband and I were actually still dating, and he was living in Brooklyn, I was living in Edinburgh, and we were doing like forwards and backwards and long distance stuff. And we kind of always said, you know, like, I think until something nudges us to make a call, we'll just sort of see what happens. And we're both pretty go with the flow, and both, you know, deeply supportive of each other's, you know, passions and crafts and stuff. And so it kind of came to a point where it was like, neither of us wanted the other person to give up on anything they had managed to achieve or build in their respective, you know, homes. And so it literally it was about that, and the song was just kind of all of my songs are kind of journal entries, to be honest. So this was my sort of journal entry about how we're going to maneuver this and how we're going to figure out what the next step is in our relationship. But yeah, so it's called Love Like This. Yeah, I wrote it for me, I think. And what was so lovely when other people found something in it. You know, I think it was one of the first songs that I really, really just wrote because I needed to write it. There was no intention other than that behind it. And for that to hit was just, you know, extra magical, I think. But yeah, Love Like This.
You look for the best in me, the things that I really believe, and you know that's all I needed from the start. You travel the world for me, set sail in the ocean breeze, but I'll always feel the beating of your heart. 'Cause our love can light up the dark, but our love keeps us apart. And the reason why it feels so hard for me to make a choice is I'm learning to love like this. And I won't waste 1 second more. I need to hear your voice. So I'll learn how to love. I'll learn how to love like this. You know I'll make room for you if only
exactly how you planned. I only want good for you, and maybe I'll add some too, and we'll find our perfect place, our wonderland. 'Cause our love can light up the dark, but our love keeps us apart. And the reason why it feels so hard for me to make a choice is I'm learning to love, I'm learning to love like this. And I won't waste 1 second more, I need to hear your voice. So I'll learn how to love, I'll learn how to love like this. And the reason why it feels so hard for me to make a choice is I'm learning to love, I'm learning to love like this.
There's so much going on in Scotland, and even like between Edinburgh and Glasgow, the whole of Scotland's got so many different scenes. But like, if you're when you're in Scotland, especially in the sort of more like commercial scene and the gigging scene, so much of it is like sort of indie bands. And like, but there's also this whole other world of like songwriters that are doing everything from sort of contemporary folk right through to, you know, proper pop tracks are coming out of Edinburgh as well, in Scotland. And so yeah, it'd be really lovely to see a bit more of a diverse uh export of the different styles and things that are happening in Scotland, because it's not just all bagpipes and
No.
ceilidhs and trad music, although that is a fantastic export,
Of course.
and something that the world clearly loves, and so do we always do it at every wedding, you know. But it's lovely to have platforms like this perhaps as well that are sort of considering other musical spaces that are also coming out of Scotland. It's good because there's a huge vibrant scene here of all sorts of different stuff. So it's great to have that
Absolutely.
highlighted.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
I think where it's like, I think it's almost, this may be a complete tangent, but like it's almost like when people are ask artists who their influences are, and I'm always like, are you asking me what I sound like, or are you asking me what my influences are? Because those are two like massively different things. And it's like that kind of thing. It's like if somebody's going to go and see or celebrate specifically Scottish music, are they going for the trad stuff, or are they going to see what's happening in the music scene in Scotland? So it's like one of those, like, but to see both of them on the same stage, why not? Like, music is so inclusive and covers so much ground, and people love their favorite two songs might be a death metal song and a country ballad, you know, like, no,
And
you know,
why
there's no,
not?
why not? Like, music just it hits or it doesn't, you know. But that sounds amazing. Like, that'd be a great project, you know, is to have a bit more of a sort of modern take on what Scottish music is. Yeah.
And so, Mike, I always love to hear about other artists' inspirations. What inspires you?
I think, do you know, I think for me, so much of so I write loads of songs as well as do my own stuff. So I work with like loads of different songwriters and artists, like writing different stuff. But I think like my biggest inspiration is just, it's got to be melody. I think like it's got to be, like, I grew up listening to Elvis and the Beatles and Billy Joel and Queen, and like that was the soundtrack growing up. You know, that was my parents' record collection that I now hold on to. But then also like musical theater stuff. So like my parents used to be in like a local theater company thing, and my dad would be in the musicals and my mum would direct them. So we kind of always grew up singing and listening to music and all sorts of different genres, you know. And then I sort of took all of that on board and started playing piano from quite a young age, and but more of a like playing it by ear and tinkering and making up songs and stories and melodies and things. So I think like the biggest inspiration with music stuff has got to be melody, very, very closely followed by story. You know, I think it's got to I don't know, we were just listening to Adele's new song that just came out, and it's so like, I love her writing because it's so clean and clear, and here's what I wanted to tell you, and here's how I felt about it, you know. And I don't know, I think there's something really like classic about that kind of songwriting that I definitely lean to. But don't get me wrong, sometimes it is so much fun to be like, let's write an absolute pop banger and just get everyone dancing and doing stuff. But for me as an artist, I definitely like to hold on to that element of things, and making sure that things have space for each other when it comes to musical instrumentation, or when it comes to melodies, or even lyrical stuff. I'd rather it be simple and uncomplicated and clear, and have room to do what it's supposed to do, you know, like making sure that the pianos aren't talking over the vocal, or the drums take away from anything else, you know, that sort of real like focus on music and space and melody, I think is definitely an inspiration. But yeah, I mean, literally inspired from all over the place. You know, I could be sitting noodling on a guitar and accidentally write a song in 20 minutes, and another time I have to go searching for things and sort of sitting in a conversation with someone maybe for 2 hours talking about our lives, and then suddenly the next day something springs to mind, and a song is written. So yeah, from all over the place. But I think that definitely that upbringing of story songs and melody, for sure.
Absolutely. With some of the artists you mentioned there, like Billy Joel, I mean, fantastic, and Queen, fantastic songs full of melody and story that just grip you straight away and take you on an adventure. And you mentioned your parents being artistic as well. Did you grow up in a performance environment that engaged with the arts?
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah. So they did it all. They always did it at an amateur level. Like, it was like a local theatre thing that started in like, literally they put shows on in our high school auditorium space, and then it sort of got a little bit bigger, and they started doing it in one of the theatres here in the Churchill Theatre, which is quite a famous sort of theatre here. And so yeah, I was like the youngest child in The King and I when I was 4. So yeah, so there'd always been an element of I guess performing, but also always encouraged to do so. You know, we always like fancy dress parties and Halloween are still my favorite things, because it's that sort of I just grew up in that space and was always allowed to explore that, you know, and explore performance, whether it was for anybody or not. It didn't really matter. It was part of the creating was the part that was important, I think, to my parents. And but yeah, my mum taught me piano, and my dad is like karaoke king, and yeah, so we've always kind of sang. We've always sang in the car. We've always sort of played with. Also, the other thing I think that was really important to where I've gone musically is that we always used to sing harmonies in the car. So we're like we would always be trying to figure out that, or singing like rounds, and you know, playing with those kind of ideas. And I think that's probably an element of where my sort of love of harmony and comes from, for sure. Because also, I mean, it's on top of, you know, the bigger sort of pop stuff with Queen and Billy Joel and all that, you know, we were also listening to Simon and Garfunkel. We were listening to, you know, like real sort of classic melodies and harmonies that but yeah, I never really thought about that. That probably is where the harmony stuff comes from, is from
That's absolutely
chorus line and amdram performances of musicals.
I mean, that's amazing though, and you know, being able to, well, firstly being able to engage artistically with your family, lovely, you know, because there's a certain amount of bravery involved in expressing one's feelings, and having that family dynamic to do that in. Amazing. Some families can't even talk to each other, never mind sing medleys.
Yeah, no,
gorgeous.
I was very, very lucky. I had a great sort of open creative upbringing, which was really, really helpful, and I think definitely led to what I do now, for sure. It's got to have, right? Like it must have influenced it.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Mike's mum and dad, for encouraging and inspiring this young man. I was going to ask you, please, a wee bit about Saving Grace
Yeah.
and the inspirations behind that, because it's very timely. But I'd love to hear more about that, please.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like Saving Grace. Saving Grace was like originally I actually wrote it. It was during the first lockdown year, so it was sort of, I don't know, maybe around sort of May, June ish, and then I had just not maybe the year before I'd started playing guitar a little bit because I'd always had a guitar kicking around. Like most homes have got some sort of ukulele or guitar kicking around them, I think now.
Yeah.
Um, but I'd always sort of, I don't know, I think I always made the excuse of saying that my hands were the wrong way around. So like on a piano, you use your right hand to do all the melody and the left hand to play chords, and on a guitar you do all of the sort of the placements of your fingers on the fretboard with your left hand, and the strumming was with your right. So I always sort of, I think I used that as an excuse for too long a time. But anyway, a friend of mine, Kathy Muir, who's an amazing singer songwriter, actually based in Edinburgh as well, she learned two of my songs. I was playing percussion and piano for a set that she was playing, and she had learned two of my songs on guitar. And I'd said, look, I've learned these. Do you want to play them at the set? I was like, all right, okay, cool. And then I loved them so much. I was like, well, now I'm going to have to go and learn how to do them on my own because I need to be able to play these songs on guitar. So that was like fast forward a couple of years, back to 2020, and I'd started noodling on a guitar and writing a little bit on a guitar. I'd released a single called Happy that was a guitar song, and I was noodling away. And it was also right at this moment where so I'd mentioned before that Chris and I were going forwards and backwards across the pond to visit each other. But of course, the second the pandemic hit, the flights were all cancelled and nobody could go anywhere. So I was here. I was there actually. I was in Connecticut for a wedding, for his cousin's wedding in February. And I came home right at the very end of February. It was like the 28th of February. And then in March is when everything started to close down, the end of March. And that was it. So I was here and Chris was there, and there was no scope for how long things were going to go for, and nobody knew. So this is now a couple of months into that, and the song started to write itself, and I was just playing this little melody, and I was sat in the living room with this banged up little acoustic guitar, and that was from, so I used to work in a cafe, and one of the customers came in one day with this like entirely covered in dust soft guitar case, and was like, this was in my attic, you do music, right? Do you want it? I was like, yeah, cool. So anyway, so I just had this little clunky acoustic guitar kicking around the house, and was sat on my chair in the living room, and I was just like curled up. I remember sitting quite curled up and writing, not writing, just noodling, just making stuff up, and then this little idea came about Chris being my saving grace, and it was really about how he'd been such a huge part in me pursuing music, and how pursuing music had then in turn opened up this whole new approach to life, I think, and really aiming for happy and aiming for the things that are important, and making sure that we're really not here for a long time, and so to make sure that as long as it's not detrimental to anybody else, that we should enjoy it as much as we can, and that we should approach it with a view of how wonderful it is and how amazing it can be. Not to say it doesn't have its challenges, but I think making sure that we acknowledge the good parts is really important. And so that all came streaming through my brain while I was sitting noodling on a guitar, and I had this idea for someone being my saving grace instead of some sort of personality trait or thought. It was like, no, this other person actually is the savior. And I ran quickly through, and I'm lucky enough as well to have a wee studio here. And I ran through and I grabbed a microphone and I pulled it through to the living room, and I sat down back exactly where I was, because I don't know, there was something about where I was sat, and I hit record, and it just kind of wrote itself. It just happened, and I was noodling, and shortly after that I decided, right, I'm going to put some songs out. I want to put out a little EP. We don't know how long we're going to be stuck at home. Let's just capture some of these songs that I'd been writing and thinking about. And so I just myself and a guitar in my living room recorded a 5-track EP called Songwriter Volume 1, and I put that out, and Saving Grace was one of the tracks that was on there, and then people really loved it and really loved that song, and specifically that song, they seemed to really resonate with how many people were feeling that same kind of way about just this sort of endless waiting, but knowing that there's like light at the end of the tunnel, and knowing that the reasons why you're waiting, you know, but not knowing when and not knowing how, but knowing you'll still be there waiting. So and it totally resonated with everyone. There was so many people's situations for the last couple of years, still is. And so Liam Nari, who mixes and all of my material, who was actually an old band member years ago, he was the guitarist in the band I was in when I was a teenager. So I've known him for 20 years nearly. And we decided to do a full studio version, but of course we were still all at home. So I put the piano parts and the guitar parts down here and recorded all the vocals and harmonies. And my friend Elspeth Mackay, who's a string arranger that I met through the BBC, she was actually playing strings on one of the tracks that we did for the performance. And I sent her the song, and she loved it, and she wanted to make an arrangement for it. So she went off in her living room and arranged the string section for it. A friend of mine as well, Rory Morrison, Roo, everyone calls him, is an amazing bassist. He was kind enough to add some bass to it. And then I'm sure I mentioned before, I was a drummer, but so I jumped into a local studio to go and record the drums for it. And then we sent it all down to Liam in London, who was in London, and he mixed it all, and we got it all together. It was done entirely remotely.
Amazing.
Which was a huge project, but it was so much fun because it was this time where none of us were gigging, none of us were playing live music, and loads of us were still stuck at home. Scotland, you know, only since like July really has been open again, you know, and that's still on a limited capacity. So this is this time last year. So we were still really, you know, locked. I think we were actually in a second lockdown at that point. I think we'd been open for a few days. We tasted of freedom, and then we were back indoors again. Yeah, so we put it all together, and it just turned out so magically. It seemed to just capture, I think, trusting everyone to do what they wanted to do on the track as well, where everyone felt so close to the song. It was really a magical experience doing. And then the music video itself as well was a filmmaker called Mark Piasecki, who runs Northhold Photography. Does landscapes and weddings, but also does loads of session films, musicians doing live sessions. So got in touch with him and was like, would you be up for filming something for this video? And then in the October, we got the news that Chris was allowed to come back. And he was able, so after 8 months apart, he managed to get over here. And we were like, well, who better to be in the music video than the two of us? It was our story, you know.
Brilliant.
And we were still we were still locked down, so it meant we could do it because it was just us and one person on a camera. So Mark filmed it all himself, just him, and me and Chris are in it, and we and my dog Ben, he made a little feature as well. But yeah, and we filmed the whole thing, just the three of us, and told our story through the video as well. It all just lined up so magically. It was such an amazing experience to do, and to have a project like that, especially during such an uncertain time, but actually almost like the point of the song, of that waiting, when everything finished, everything seemed to be working again, and Chris was here and we were together again, and things were starting to, you know, and it all sort of, it was this full circle moment of our whole experience, I guess, of being in lockdown. And then 2 months later we got married, so the rest is history. So, yeah, thank you. So it was an amazing project. It was amazing to work with all these incredible musicians and artists and people, and I should say as well, the artwork for it was a friend from school who took up life drawing and painting, and he had started an Instagram account of just some of his little paintings that he was doing, and purely for himself, for just to explore it and see what happened with it. And I stumbled on these paintings and I was like, these are just incredible. So I reached out and asked if I could use one of them for the artwork, and he very kindly agreed, and sent, actually I have it, he sent over, it was these little beautiful little postcard sized little watercolor paintings.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
and it
That's very
became
cool.
it became the artwork. So yeah, it was a huge project, and it involved so many people, and yeah, all of us done it from home, which was the weird and wonderful part of it all. But yeah, so Saving Grace became my last single. I've just released a new EP, but that was my last single before that, and actually went down really well. Joe Wiley on BBC Radio 2 ended up playing it, and that which was a crazy achievement for, like, I'm independent, I don't have a label or publisher or anything. It's just me doing everything. So to get something like that was just incredible. I have a manager who's doing an amazing job, and he is hugely involved in the radio side of things. But there's no label, there's no big funding behind anything. So to get something like that and from a song that meant so much and so many people were involved in that was amazing. It was just loved it. It was just incredible.
Absolutely. Well, uh, with the judges that you'd mentioned before from the songwriter competition, I mean, you've got some great pals that you can turn to, fellow musicians, songwriters. They, as fellow songwriters, understand, and you understand them better than anybody. And I like just the song changes lives, music changes lives, inspires people, and it is amazing that the power of hearing something for the first time and it can change you. Just straight away it changes you on some level. And you'd mentioned the kind of the cleanness, the directness of Adele, for instance. What just the ability to emote directly, heart to heart, and certainly you are someone who does that brilliantly well. By telling your story, by sharing your human experience, and it resonates so honestly with other people. And that's what I felt when I heard your song. I was like, oh wow. What advice would you give to people who are kind of starting out in their own songwriting journeys?
I think just go for it is one of the things, is to just like not be too scared of it. I think like whenever I jump in with someone, a lot of singer songwriters haven't done much collaboration stuff before, but I so highly recommend it. Whether you use any of the songs or not, it's the doing that's important. And I think like um, jumping in and doing that sort of loosens you up a bit, but it's also learning. It's definitely like a thing that you can pick up tips from other songwriters. So like getting into collaborative spaces where you're just like songwriter, even with a friend, just get like be like, come on, we'll go and write a song and see what happens. And if it's rubbish, it's rubbish, but also it's magical because you did something cool. So like I definitely recommend that for learning how other people do it. And you get first-hand experience doing it like that because you're literally in the same space. Or on a lot of my stuff has been on Zoom, obviously recently. So, but you can still get a feel for it. But the other thing as well is just to write what you want to write. Like I think for a long time I was trying to write what I thought other people would want me to write, if that makes sense. And then the second I stopped doing that, the first song I did after stopping doing that was Love Like This. And it was the song that opened up all of these doors and opened up this huge opportunities for me to then progress as an artist and writer. So the second I actually let go of don't get me wrong, there's no solution and I haven't fully got rid of it yet, but caring what other people think is a huge hindrance. It's not a positive, beneficial thing. I think being nervous or being worried what other people think of something you've done is the thing that stops most people ever doing it in the first place, because it's this worry. And I can't remember who said it. Somebody said like, what do you do about anxiety, and what's the best way to sort of handle that? And the person had said, like, write down all of the things that you're worried about happening and then score off all the things that you can't control. And one of those things that you can't control is how other people perceive anything that you do. And so letting go of that and being okay with just doing what you do is a huge relief, I think, when you sort of go, when somebody actually resonates with it, and it's like you're not chasing that sort of success for the sake of success. I think is like a really weird way to be creative. I think that it is also important. I understand that people have deadlines and people want to be commercial songwriters, but I think that ultimately to find your feet, and then people will want to write with you if you know who you are and what you are bringing to the table. And I think unless you know that, or sorry, I think the only way to find out that is to practice it and figure it out. And you might write a song the same way as somebody else, but you also might write it entirely differently. But unless you've had a shot with other people, and unless you've written a whole load of songs that are weird or are different or are cheesy or are embarrassing or whatever, you've got to write all of them songs, because otherwise you'll just sit and look at a blank piece of paper. So I think just do it, just do it and see what happens. That's the best piece of advice, is to do, and just do you, your version of it.
Great advice. Yeah, I mean, when people talk about the notion of there being creative people and people that aren't creative, or anyone who thinks they aren't creative, I always think, what a terrible thing to think of yourself, that, oh, I'm not a creative person, but other people are. It's like everyone has the ability to emote, exchange, convey. Everyone has a story, and it's important that we share it with others, that it might help them, inspire them, save them from a moment of craziness, or just help them in a
totally. And everyone, every single person is creative. You think if you've ever told anybody a story from your past, you've been creative. You've told a tale. You've made it into a thing that other people have enjoyed to listen to. Like, so literally anybody that's ever had a conversation with anybody about anything is creative. That's part of it. That's the whole point of telling stories, and all we do each other all day is converse and tell each other stories, really. So
absolutely,
there's no reason why you can't then translate them into poems or songs or anything, paintings, drawings, anything.
Absolutely. Well, I certainly find you to be a hugely inspirational person, and I really hope that we can have another chat at some point again. I really would be delighted if we.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's been
that.
Always happy to chat to people who are passionate about music and humans. That's the real thing, isn't it? It's all just trying to be humans and trying to be good humans. Exactly. And finding like-minded ones is always extra delightful. So
it's always lovely. I'm just so chuffed to have had the chance to speak with you. Where can we direct people to see your social media or website? Can you tell the audience your website, please?
Yeah. So you can. So my new EP just came out, so you can get that on all of the usual places. That's all the streaming platforms and download places. But I actually have MikeMcKenzieOnline.com. So you can head over there, and that's got mailing list and all that kind of stuff. And then I've followed that trend, and all of my handles for social media are Mike McKenzie Online. So it's McKenzie McKenzie. But yeah, or just Google Mike McKenzie Songwriter. I think it comes up when you do that. So we'll see.
Excellent. It does. I will certainly look forward to getting the chance to hear you do your thing in Scotland, and I'll come to wherever you happen to be playing over here.
Perfect.
But I hope you have a superb Thanksgiving. I know you're coming over to the States, so I hope you have a brilliant time.
Thank you.
Friends, and thank you so much. You have inspired me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. I really, honestly, so appreciate you reaching out and getting to have this conversation with you. It's been delightful. So thank you.
What an excellent interview with Mike McKenzie, winner of the BBC Radio Scotland Songwriter of the Year Award. A fantastic guy, an inspiration. And yeah, as soon as I heard his song on the radio, A Love Like This, in 2019, it just connected with me on such an emotional level. It felt true, and I think that's the mark of a great song, when you just connect with it instantly. Thank you so much to Mike McKenzie for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from him very soon. Thank you so much for joining us for Sounds from Scotland. My name's Jamie McGeechan, and I hope that you have enjoyed the show.
decorated. You are the magnetic field where I'm drawn, pointed north, fluctuating, we never cross. You are my first aid manual. You are my paracetamol. You are my Adrian, giving me the strength I need to be the greatest I can be. This is poetry for a girl who can't love, and she can't love me. Charm me again with your arrogance. Is this room getting warmer? Are you waiting less? Pardon my ignorance, 'cause when you look at me like that, it's contagious. You are the flame where I need a spark. You are my courage when I'm in the dark. You were my first game of truth and dare. Even though you're not here, to me you're everywhere. This is poetry for a girl who can't